Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. Really nice to see the big group gather. Just a reminder that we're both at our regularly scheduled Sunday sitting time and the closing talk of our equanimity weekend, which is the closing weekend of our Brahma Vihara month. So it's very special. And we will just have the talk today of Michele. And next week we'll get back to the Sundays of having a sitting together and talk or Q&A. So feel free to check Zoom pages, look or see who's with us today or not. And we'll enjoy this good talk offering.
Mm. Mm. Well, it's really incredible to be able to do this actually with all of you, the month long, the weekends, the Sunday sits. It's a kind of magnificence. So here we are with holy equanimity. This is a poem by Sándor Weöres. He lived from 1913 to 1989 in Hungary. It's called Rain. The rain's pounding away at the rusty eaves, twirling, sliding, bubbling foam. Well, that's rain. You too, and I should walk now as free as that. On cloud, on air, the meadow and the vapor roads. Move around up there and here below like this liquid thing, flowing into human life on rooftops and on shoes. That's what equanimity can do. There was a great monk in Sayadaw that I met in 1978, Tangpu Sayadaw from Burma. Whenever I would bring his food into him, he would tell me to keep my mind like water. He was the one that, when I met him, it was said he had spent 33 years in a cave before he flew to Boston from Burma. And he had us take the bed out of the room he was staying in because he hadn't laid down for, I think, 33 years as well. He was said he could read letters just by standing on them. But his teaching to me over and over was keep a mind like water, not like a rock, but like water. And I think that poem really captures it. It's so grounded, and yet it's so light. And so that sense of the water being able to flow with life as it is, because life is changing moment to moment. I think over time, as our equanimity builds, we understand that keeping a mind, heart like water, it's like we become very faithful and we don't resist that flowing moment to moment, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral as much. Equanimity is a complete understanding of things as they are, and it hasn't been done through the thought process. It's like complete direct, it's like being with our direct experience, experientially, like a whole WHOLE in one moment. It's a complete um, ending of greed, hatred, and delusion in a moment that we all can experience. So again, as equanimity develops and we have more access to it, it's like an endowment. It's an endowment of strength and courage, this willingness to be with things as they are. So there's that willingness to have that watery awareness. So that being with things as they are is very different than being attached to want them to be a certain way. Yeah. Wanting things to be as we want them to be versus being with things as they are, or out of aversion or fear, wanting it to be a certain way, the motivation, not as it is, how delusion wants life to be rather than how it is. So the equanimity, there is no motivation of getting something or getting rid of anything. There's no expectation, agenda. It's very free. So it's beyond pleasure and pain. It includes pleasure, neutrality, pain. So one could say that equanimity is the deepest kindness we can have for ourselves and others. And it feels wonderful. Wisdom feels wonderful. It sees clearly. And as we've been attempting to offer these teachings, we are attempting to offer the Brahma Viharas, kind of infusing our Vipassana practice, our moment-to-moment experience with the Brahma Viharas, or another way to say it would be the Vipassana moment-to-moment experience infused with the Brahma Viharas. It's kind of either way. So the journey of practicing the Brahma Viharas, practicing the Vipassana, it's that journey of cultivating a relationship of wisdom and love with everything that appears. No part left out. And I was explaining one of my favorite movies of recent times was the last Mission Impossible, because I think that this journey is mission impossible. It can feel like it at times. And this particular last movie, the level of consistent facing obstacles that are catastrophic, not just like tripping over something or somebody being mad at us or failing at something. This is like world catastrophe. What was wonderful about it, it was so heartening. Every time there was this extreme jam and almost the end of the world, Tom Cruise would be saying, "It's okay, it's okay, it's okay." And we were kind of talking about it in a question and answer period yesterday. But what was so wonderful is that Jesse mentioned it's so obvious that it wasn't okay. And I think that we really have to get that with our lives. Like, there are times when we might be able to say, yeah, it's okay, or it's sort of okay, but sometimes it really doesn't feel it's okay. But equanimity is actually being able to go, it's okay, it's okay. Why? Because it makes our experience workable. it makes it our attention with what's happening flexible, right? It's like and that endowment of strength and courage comes from this ability to go, actually, this feels not okay, but it's my awareness of it is okay. And we don't always want to hear that, right? We want freedom to be, I can make it what I want it to be. I can make the world what I want it to be. I can control what I want. That's freedom. I can do whatever I want. This idea, this conditioned idea of freedom is actually crazy, right? It's so that it's going, this shifting into equanimity practice. Several people were mentioning today. It's sobering. It's very sobering. And it's so liberating. So even with the times when we're struggling the most and resisting the suffering, there's an awareness that can go, oh, resistance, it's okay. I can learn how to go through this, be with this. Struggling, it's not like we have to run away from it, or we can if we want, of course, but it's like there's this possibility of getting a relationship with struggle, getting a relationship with wanting to control it. And being able to say, well, of course I want to control this. That's being with things as they are. Being with things as they are. If we're numbing out, right, or drowning, okay, the attention opens up around it and goes, oh, yeah, my good friend, whatever, right? It's like pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. It's just numbness, no problem. So I hope you can even, the fathoming of the freedom of it, the fathoming of that in this practice, the experience, what the experience is, does not matter. If the experience is mattering, that's not freedom. It might be a great experience, or it might be a horrible one, right? But that's not how this practice is practiced. The practice is one of stepping back and just not being identified with it as me or I or mine, taking it personally. So sometimes that feeling of defeat, it's just feeling defeated by an imaginary war with what we're facing. It's just an imaginary war. And it's okay, right? Just to distract, to retreat. Sometimes the metta practice, the loving kindness, is like a warm shawl. Someone described it the other day, a warm shawl, or um, a warm bath that never cools off. You know how quickly bath water gets cold, but the loving kindness doesn't have to do that. So when we look at that, of course we have this need to control. And that's what a lot of this practice is facing that. It's like, it's really, you look at that we were basically conditioned to believe we can control, right? So that there's that sense of this gradual shifting into understanding anicca, dukkha, anatta, understanding impermanence, understanding the unreliability of experience, understanding the uncontrollability of experience. This is a poem by Lipo, Ancient China, 701 to 762. This is like climbing a mountain and seeing everything from that perspective of the human world and all everything from this great perspective. Ancient air climbed high to gaze upon the sea, heaven and earth, so vast, so vast. Frost clothes all things in autumn. Winds waft the broad wastes cold. Glory, splendor, eastward flowing stream. The world's affairs, just waves. White sun covered, its dying rays. The floating clouds, no resting place. In lofty trees nest lowly finches. Down among the thorny brush, the phoenix perches. All that's left to go home again. Hand on my sword, I sing. The going's hard. I don't know if you followed that totally, but look at how lofty it was. Like the loftiness of it, the perspective, the vastness, the breadth, the the understanding, and then having to go back to the earth, to the worldly affairs, and singing, okay, the going's hard. That's equanimity. But Nisargadatta, Sri Nisargadatta was once asked, do you have any problems? And he's like, of course I have problems. I'm a human being. Like, like the absurdity of the question. So equanimity, which is so hard for us to understand, includes our difficulties. It includes our problems. It includes our reactions to the pain in the world or holding on to the pleasure. And so often I think, especially with the accepting the pain in the world, particularly, and the grief or anger, sadness, fear, all the ways that we respond or react when we connect with the pain, uh, it's important to understand what is it that makes that difficulty workable. And if we keep practicing and practicing, we will see that it's to be able to, we were talking about it in the Q&A today, not try to get back to a feeling of equanimity that is just a sense of contentment with what is, but it's already changed in the moment to moment experience. We are already sad. We've already gotten sad. And so to think that there's some kind of problem or failure, it's not that the equanimity isn't working. What has happened is that we're not applying the equanimity to things are as they are, to the sadness, and to allow ourselves to just simply feel sad. Now, in these times that we're living in, if we don't learn to do that, we're going to be miserable. Because the sadness will be able to come and go, just like the sound of a bird, just like the breath, just that, like everything. If we actually experience it, it's going to pass. Sometimes we can get into a feeling of a bottomless sorrow, but that's just bottomless sorrow. That will pass. It's just this, it's just that, it's just this, it's just that. It's okay to be afraid. It's okay. It's okay. That's what it's okay. It's okay. It's okay means. And then, of course, what we were also talking about, but just to reinforce it, it's that to really get that if we can't be with it, if we can't be with the sadness or the fear or the anger or whatever, that that's okay. That's where equanimity is holy. It includes everything. It's totally not personal. What that means is that there's no equanimity. Equanimity is impermanent, right? There's no mindfulness. There's no this. It's okay, right? But and then we have the flexibility of going, oh, do I need that warm bath of metta, or do I need a walk, or a cup of tea, or whatever it is that we shift away. So the when we hear the word im- imperturbability, it is not indifference. They might look the same, but we know. Krishnamurti used to say, only you know if you're incorruptible. You'll know the difference between perturbable and imperturbable. And faking it, and the indifference is faking it. And that's okay too. That's what's so hard to teach it, because it's like the indifference is just the heart can't bear it. It has to numb out. It needs a break. And it isn't ours. It isn't mine. We just allow it. No problem. Mm. I have not read Henry David Thoreau for a while. It's this is from January 10th, 1858. This one always wins because it's so great. The north side of Walden Pond is a warm walk in sunny weather. January 10th. It's a warm walk in sunny weather. If you are sick and despairing, go forth in winter and see the red alder catkins dangling at the extremities of the twigs, all in the wintry air, like long, hard mulberries, promising a new spring and the fulfillment of all our hopes. We prize any tenderness, any softening in the winter, catkins, bird nests, insect life, etc., etc. The most I got, perchance, is the sight of a mulberry-like red catkin, which I know has a dormant life in it, seemingly much greater than my own. So it doesn't sound like he got really caught up in the despair, right? It sounds like he went into despair, and he's saying, if you're sick and despairing, go forth in winter, right? Get out in it, right? Like just however we need to do that. But this is saying this is a metaphor. Prize any tenderness. Prize any tenderness. My sister, older sister, has been having a very difficult time physically. 2 months with no sleep. There's been so much physical pain. Not allowed any painkillers. or not even not allowed. They told me recently, someone told me recently that no painkiller can touch this pain. But finally, she's had 2 surgeries. They unblocked the arteries, um, and she had some sleep. And she described waking up. She likes to have a cup of coffee when she wakes up, and she described it as the most happy and peaceful she's ever been. Like, she's like almost 80, so that's saying something, right? And she said she had such deep contentment just having some sleep. Think about it. After 2 months, and the gratitude, the joy of just sitting there with a cup of coffee. And of course, I mentioned this already, but they're at least going to have to amputate the toe, but it's looking like she's in so much pain still. She's figuring out maybe it's going to be more. This morning she said, Michelle, I'm going to freak out if they have to amputate my foot. And I didn't say anything. For a long time, there was silence. And she said, I guess if they're going to have to do it, they will have to do it. That's equanimity, right? Of course she doesn't want to lose her foot, right? But it's that facing how things are after all this. Some people are saying, with the difficulty of having a body and the suffering of getting sick and having these things happen that seem so hard, but they actually help us develop our practice. Of course, we're not looking for it, but it's like you can see it over. I would never have thought my sister would ever say that. And it's very genuine. It's like, oh, I guess this might have to happen. And so we get to that place of part of the equanimity teaching is the kamasaka, the karma unfolding. And the Buddha teaching that it's actually imponderable. Imponderable. That is so important. All of our instinct, all of our conditioning is to figure things out intellectually, right? To ponder it until we nail it, until we understand it in that way. And the whole Vipassana practice is going in a different direction, which is really experiencing things directly without going through the thought process. So we really understand impermanence if we notice, if we're really with that rising movement in breath, we're really with that falling movement. If we're there, really, we'll go through a grief process. Because Vipassana is understanding the nature of how things are experientially. So we might notice that breath thousands of times, maybe more millions of times, and not have that insight. But if you are mindful, right? If it's said in the text, if you're mindful with some continuity, even for a short while, insight will be inevitable if we're not going through the thought process. Inevitable. So one of the teachings, besides the anicca, dukkha, anatta, that of course We don't need to believe in lifetimes, right? Just to understand when all beings who take birth experience anicca, dukkha, anatta, right? Gods, goddesses, insects, animals, humans, angels, devas, all beings, any being who takes birth will pass away. Yeah, that deep understanding of impermanence, and that because of that, experience is unreliable. Because of impermanence, moment to moment. That's why we're going through experience, not thinking about it. It's like we go through it, we understand anicca or dukkha or anatta. And usually over time, we really start getting what really matters. Kindness, right? It's like, isn't kindness what matters, right? Gratitude, generosity, the Brahma Viharas, wisdom. Uh, and then if we kind of start grasping that perhaps the Buddha's teaching was right, all of us we have already been everybody's mother, child, father, cousin, sister, brother, of every being, every aunt, everything we see and experience, every fish, like it just goes on, right? Every bird. We have been related. We are all related. All the indigenous spiritual traditions tell us this. The level of how we're related is phenomenal. Um, so then again, what really matters? Probably more kindness, right? More gratitude. And yet, it's so easy to forget. I walk on the road by my house a lot when I can get the time to walk. And ever since I was a little kid, kind of like before I can even remember, if I ever see a dead being, I do a ceremony. Even when I was a little kid, I just respect that a dead being so much. I want to wish it well. I had little graveyards when I was a kid for snakes or chipmunks but now I don't have that much time. But the other day I'm walking along and I have had a friendship. It feels like a very beautiful friendship with a copper dragonfly in this one area. It's wonderful. And I was walking along and I thought it had been run over on the ground. And so I felt so sad and I kept walking closer and I was getting closer and the wings were big, too big, and they were too dark for this copper dragonfly. And then I realized it was a dead cockroach. And I had that kind of, I don't even know what you'd call it, twitch, like a almost invisible twitch where it was like, oh, it's just a cockroach, right? Oh, it's so painful to even admit. But it's like I'm not so connected in the way that I am with the dragonfly. Um, and I just had to pause a long time and take in that I have this deep respect for all beings and had failed to include that in those moments and just was sending metta to this being. And I will chant and find flowers or anything somewhat alive and make a little place for them. I pull them off the road. And I think that you can't underestimate the metta chant, for example, that we do at the end of each day and the weekend. That even if you just took that the Buddha said to send metta to all beings without limit, boundlessly, yeah? Like that was one of the teachings, to wish well all beings. And I hope you understand that that really helps deepen equanimity, right? It helps understand this equality of relationship. Like we're teaching an equality relationship between loneliness and happiness, right? Between sadness and joy, between a dragonfly and a cockroach. Yeah, it's like the loving kindness supports the equanimity supports the loving kindness. Who knows what past relationships I've had with that cockroach? But I can tell you, some years ago in Burma, um, there was a cockroach that lived in the bathroom that I was going in, you know, during the day and night. But I didn't see it until nighttime. And after like a week or 2 weeks up in Burma, where my kuti, my cottage was, and through many years of, it was hard. Going into that kuti, one night I saw this cockroach, and then the next night I saw the cockroach, and then it started acting friendlier. And that's when I really realized that you can be friends with a cockroach. That cockroach helped me so much. I really mean it. It was like such a good friend, such a happiness to see it. And so the other day when I saw the dead cockroach and had that twitch, I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot. We're so deeply related." Kamasaka, ownership of action. We are the owners of our actions. Our happiness and our sorrow depends upon our actions, not upon our wishes for others or ourselves. Our joy and sorrow arise and pass according to natural law. Unfathomable, but understandable. There's a saying from, I think it's the fifth Zen patriarch. The great way is easy for those who cease to cherish their preferences. That is a more relatively recent translation in modern times. So it's important to hear it for those who cease to cherish their preferences. It does not say for those who cease to have preferences. It's so important. Of course we have preferences. But we have a choice with our conditioning of likes and dislikes. We have a choice to stop, like I did with the cockroach, and just like, wait a minute, I have a choice here. Every moment is like that. Every moment we have the freedom of choice. That's what this practice is all about. Do we follow conditioning, right? Or do we understand equanimity is without conditions? Without conditions. Metta is without conditions. Karuna without conditions. Mudita without conditions. There was a monk in Burma. Um, he was already there when I got there, living at the monastery, but he had ordained late in life. He was an engineer in China. He spoke some English. Um, but what I loved about Uzinji, this is going to sound funny, but he had the same kind of humor as I did. Like it was really, really fun to be with Uzinji. And he had kind of a Western humor as well. So when we all met him and when we were with him for a while, he wasn't as old as like when you start having parts of your body falling apart, But there was a certain point where one year, I remember when I would walk up to him, he would say, "So," I'm like, "Oh, okay, so," he'd say, "So, my foot," which meant then you'd hear all the things wrong with his foot. And that was just his foot that year. But then next year it was like, so you bump into people like walking to the meditation hall or down to the kitchen and stuff. So I'm just saying, whenever I would bump into Uzinji, which I did a lot because Uzinji's kuti cottage was right below where I stayed, he'd say, "So," my favorite was that he'd say, "So, my nose." And then I would say, "Okay, so my nose," it's like, "Okay, so my stomach, so my foot." And he would always giggle, even the first one, the foot. He would giggle and giggle, we'd giggle. And then the last few years before he died, it was just a lot of, a lot of them. It was great. It was like, "So my elbow." And it was so much fun. He was really hurting, but it was like he made it so interesting. Every year was new body parts uh, and giggling. The other thing about Uzinji was that I don't know if I introduced a lack of decorum the Sagaing Hills, but we always wanted to walk up at the top of the hill. It was a very steep hill with a lot of brush, and the stairs fell apart. And I found a way up that was really difficult. It was like a goat would have to do it, but you could get all dirty and slide and get up there. And Uzinji in the early years would be our guide, and we go up the steps. And in later years, he just wanted to come with us, but he couldn't get up there. So we got into this thing where we would his his robes would be falling and he'd get all dirty and we'd push him up like, and then when you had to come down he'd be sliding down. And he did that until he died. It was just like he was amazing. Just it might sound simple to you, but most monks and nuns wouldn't do that. It wouldn't look good. It would be like not doing what you're supposed to do. But Uzinji just, he had so much mudita and equanimity in being with us all. And he gave us so much in that process. Mm. Nisargadatta, the question. Mm. Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj, the question to him is there no such thing as permanent perfection? He answered, yes, there is, but it includes all imperfection. That's equanimity. When we're trying to be perfect or make things perfect, we're just hating what is. But that allowing, getting a relationship with imperfection of the Brahma Viharas and wisdom, that's equanimity. Yes, there is perfection, but it includes all imperfection. It is the perfection of our self-nature which makes everything possible, perceivable, interesting. It knows no suffering, for it neither likes nor dislikes, neither accepts or rejects. Creation and destruction are the two poles between which it waves its ever-changing pattern. Be free from predilections and preferences, and the mind with its burden of sorrow will be no more. question, but am I not alone to suffer? There are others. And Maharaj said, when you go to others, you go to them with your desires and fears, and you merely add to their sorrows. First, be free of suffering yourself, and then only hope of helping others. You do not even need to hope. Oh, sorry. First, be free of suffering yourself, and then only hope of helping others. You do not even need to hope. Your very existence will be the greatest help a person can give their fellow human. Your very existence. Yeah, it's that shift again. Knowledge to just being. Being with, being with, being with, being with things as they are. So, so, so my knee. Sorry. So, when equanimity is present in the awareness and our awareness of what's happening, the awareness is liberated. It's free. It's at peace with things as they are. And it will usually feel very low key, low drama, without conditions. And it's because of that relationship with that's happening moment to moment, including all of the imperfection. So what's appearing when we include all of imperfection? When what's appearing is high drama or intense, that's okay. The equanimity is low drama, low key, even though what's appearing is high drama, right? Because it doesn't matter what the experience is. You don't have to make it low drama. The awareness is low drama. So the equanimity is neutral. It's relating to everything equally. That's why it's called neutral, with pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. So therefore, sleepiness, joy are okay. They're related to equally. Happiness, restlessness, doubt, mudita, everything that appears, you're relating to it equally. Even say doubt comes up, I'm not doing this right. Karuna, compassion can come up and relate to that with care, right? Equanimity can come up and see, oh, it's just doubt, no problem. Just like with the sound of a bird, something else happens, right? It's just like the doubt isn't sticky. Mindfulness and equanimity appear. It's not identified with. You don't have to get rid of the doubt. You don't have to get something else there. You're just totally with the doubt. No problem. It's not mine. And what's important to see there, if it's a thought that is doubting, you just don't believe the thought. The thought is okay. The content's okay. You just don't buy into it. Yeah? It's just a thought. Mm. Mahasi Sayadaw gave this great description of Lokadhamma. Lokadhamma, translated, is called the way of the world. Our mother cat is called Lokadhamma because she came to us starving, really hurting. But she found us, so I felt like she had that way of the world, that worldly conditions following her, the four worldly conditions we all face: gain and loss, pleasure and pain, praise and blame, status and disrepute. Mahasi Sayadaw said about these four Lokadhammas that everyone likes the good ones and we all dislike the bad ones. So gain and loss, pleasure, pain, praise, blame, fame, or status, disrepute. He said if a person walks in the sun, their shadow always follows them. It cannot stop, they cannot stop it from following them, right? The sun, making the shadows, right? So the shadow is always following. These laws of Lokadhamma are following all beings. And in the same way, beings are always chasing Lokadhamma. And I'm not going to go into it too much. He does like a whole huge talk about the four worldly conditions. But it's really important. If you just took praise and blame, oof, right? And he's so clear in this talk. Everyone likes praise. No one likes blame. And even the Buddha suffered from ridicule and blame. Yeah? It's the worldly conditions. The Buddha was a human being. And you can go from being highly esteemed to ridicule, right? Criticism. And then he talks about if you deserve criticism, it can still hurt us, even if we deserve it. But he said, what helps us is patience, which is a form of metta. We receive it and we practice patience by pondering it with equanimity. It's so beautiful. We all face, all of us, gain and loss, pleasure, pain, praise, blame, status, disrepute. And it's said that the Buddha and the Arahants, the fully enlightened beings, they are calm and stable in the face of the laws of Lokadhamma. So they're still receiving them, yeah? But they're not ruffled. I'm saying this because it's so important to get that even if you're the Buddha, you're subject to these. If you're fully enlightened. So that's the example of this is not about perfection. It's about being with things as they are. If you're Arahant, you're not ruffled. You're not ruffled by it. Not no anxiety or dejection. But that's how important the practice is, yeah. Not feeling like something's wrong if they're happening, yeah. Or even sometimes I think we can think, oh, it's bad karma did this or it's good karma did that. But that's so simple. It's just an oversimplification of how things are. It's like that sense of the unfathomableness of karma, the imponderableness of karma. It's all we need to know is that all we need to do is live it out collectively, individually, to keep living it out. There's a really interesting book. Jesse and I read it a long time ago. It's called Heaven's Net is Wide by Leon Hearn. And it's like tales of the samurai time in Japan. And there's a clan, the Otari clan, that this young man is inheriting the leadership. And his dad, who was the leader, has really made a mess of things. And then there's this ruthless, horrible warlord who's taking over. And he's young and he's gonna like fix it all and kill this guy and make it all better. He's really young, 17 or something, 18. And also his uncles are against him. They're jealous that he's taken over. It's like one of these great ones, like, the Mission Impossible, right? It's like, and he decides to get the whole army together and he goes to fight and he's totally defeated. And so many of his soldiers died. And he's so upset that he goes to a monastery where there's a great, great monk leader. And it's not appreciated that he goes, but he just can't deal with it. He doesn't understand what happened. He spends months there with this monk named Matsuda, who gradually tries to help train him in what we're doing, right? And look at the karma of his life. And at some point, this young man is so angry at this warlord and all losing, and Matsuda finds the right moment, and he said, "You cannot be outraged when people act according to their natures." And in this case, everyone did. You should be angry at yourself for not recognizing those natures. I love that. That's so hard to hear. Can you imagine? But it's so true. You should be angry at yourself for not recognizing those natures. That is what this evil warlord is so good at, and why he prevailed against you and everyone else, and always will, unless you change, unless you understand their natures and act accordingly. And I thought, wow, we really want to blame, right? This is like praise and blame, but we really want to blame others for stuff that's difficult in the world. But it's like, even with the Nisargadatta, it's like, take care of your own nature and you'll understand everyone's nature. And you won't be fooled. And I offer that because I think these times just like we deserve it. We deserve it. We have to step up to the plate and get it. Get what we need to do. Get what we need to do to offer peace to this world. Kindness. What matters right now? That just our very presence is helpful. Hmm. This is a very short poem by Wang Wei, 701 to 761 in China. He's part of that group of poets that were so influential, Li Po, Tu Fu, Wang Wei. All the exiles from the suffering of the times. Magnolia Basin. On branch tips, the hibiscus bloom. The mountains show off red calluses. Nobody. A silent cottage in the valley. One by one, flowers open, then fall. I'll read it one more time. It's so quiet. magnolia basin. On branch tips, the hibiscus bloom. The mountains show off red calluses. Nobody. A silent cottage in the valley. One by one, flowers open, then fall. Let's just sit for a minute. May we find peace. So there's a metta chant in an hour with the weekend month-long people and the Sunday sit people. Aloha. See you next Sunday.